All right, we should be good. Okay, so hi, Facebook. Glad you could join us today. Michael Jarbo via Zoom, Sarah and Evan here at First Lutheran in our studio, so to speak. I mean, we have a Blackboard, we have our banners, we have lights. I think we have lights. I can't actually see anything, so, but I think there's some circles somewhere in the room. Anyway, thanks for joining us. This is our Around the Blackboard. We do it once a month. We talk about current events, news articles, you know, just what's going on, kind of give a theological taste to it. Of course, we'll put this on our podcast. By the way, find us at houstontot.com. Find our YouTube page and subscribe.
Yes.
Like us on Facebook. Any other thing we need to promote? Or
I mean, if they want to rate us and review us on podcast platforms, we wouldn't say no to that either. But only if it's a good rating.
And
no haters.
And we'll be having a super awesome December 16th Theology on Tap, not air, Theology on Tap event virtually. And Craig Keener will be joining us.
Dr. Craig Keener.
Who's written the book, This Thick, on miracles. And we're going to be talking about miracles. It's a good time of year to talk about miracles with virgin births and whatnot. So, so join us December 16th. Keep an eye out for that. If you like us on Facebook, you should get notified of all that. But anyway, well, let's jump in. Michael, we wanted to talk about faith and politics and things like that. You have an article from the New York Times. Give it a go.
Yeah, coming right off of Thanksgiving. I mean, faith and politics are two things you are supposed to definitely talk about
all the time
at the dinner table. By the way, I do have, I am not in studio, but I do have a little hello sign that says around.
I like the framing on that. I mean,
I did too.
You didn't just go to Word and put in around the Blackboard. You framed it. You did the landscape view.
Use like a hipster.
Or did you have someone do it for you?
Yeah, that's not Times New Roman. That's not.
That's not time. No, Sarah, I did. I think about it. Yes. Did I? No, I did it myself. Yeah. 100%,
awesome.
100%. No, faith and politics. Yeah. Light stuff, of course, after an election that happened started early November and went a few weeks in until we found out some results that some people are still debating, including members of my family, some that are fully affirmed behind it. And so it's a unique time to have Thanksgiving lined up right then. I love that there's an SNL clip with where everyone was talking at a dinner table. It's for Thanksgiving. I think it was a couple years ago. And whenever things got tense, just all of a sudden people began to sing like Adele's like "Never mind, someone like you," and that sort of that made the whole room kind of calm. And eventually they all just sort of turned into Adele. I wish that were still the case and could have happened at dinner tables around the U.S. this year, but that didn't happen. Anyway, okay, let me get to my stuff.
My mom's name is Adele. I just have to put
So she actually is Adele.
She's like, she was like the only Adele I knew until one became globally famous. I don't know that Adele either. I'm just putting that out there.
But well, I've had the same vocal cord surgery as Adele, so I'm basically Adele.
Well, yeah. Okay. All right. So you know an Adele, Evan, and you are Adele.
Thank you for acknowledging my identity. Yes.
You're welcome. Okay, so I shared, there's an article that came out, let's see, the date was October 28th, 2020 from the New York Times. And it was entitled When Faith and Politics Meet. And basically the short is, and October 28th, for those of you who know, would have been very close to the election day, which was on November the 3rd. And the kind of the subtitle is two New York Times journalists talk about the challenge of covering religion during a pandemic in a campaign season. Which again, certainly the pandemic played a big role in this year's campaign and in other capacities as well. So the article is pretty simple by Will Dudding is his name, who just interviewed these two journalists, Ruth Graham and Elizabeth Diaz. We don't know the faith backgrounds of Diaz or Graham, but we know that they are following politics and write about politics. They are religion writers for the New York Times covering politics, okay? So there's one question that I wanted to share kind of the answers to for both of these people. And the question is, religion and politics seem inseparable these days. Has that always been the case, or has something shifted? That was the prompt question to both of these I believe, ladies, both Graham and Diaz, who had to respond. Here's what Graham said. and they're short. Graham said, I think they're inseparable partially because it's election season. And as journalists, we tend to view things through that lens ourselves. For ordinary believers, the connection is not always so clear. Some people clearly draw a connection between their faith and their view on national politics, and others definitely don't. I try to keep the mind as a reporter and not, I try to keep that in mind as a reporter and not force every story into a political frame. Then Diaz responds this way. Religion and politics both reflect shared larger questions. They are both about power. They are both about people. They are both about how people structure life together. For centuries, religion was politics, and it still is today in many parts of the world. The Vatican is a city-state. Each generation works out its own relationship to these bigger questions and to history, and the election is just one way we are seeing that play out in the United States.
Yeah, I noticed that that section jumped out to me too, because when she started by saying both of them are about power, I thought, and then I realized if I were using the term religion, I would have said the same thing. But the question, I don't have it in front of me, but I think the question is like faith and politics, do they always go together? And then they answered, at least the first one did, about religion and politics. I think the words faith and religion have a slightly different meaning, because my faith definitely informs my politics, right? But religion to me, while it goes hand in hand, like we are part of a religion, can also mean like rules, structure. Sometimes it can mean legalism. Sometimes it can be the stuff that Jesus was coming against when he's talking to the Pharisees and, Sadducees and all the E's. But, and so in that sense, yeah, it always has been about power. And in that sense, they probably would go hand in hand, because it'd be like, well, my religion says to do this, so I'll do it. But faith is something I think more honest and less about rules. And yet it still informs my politics,
Okay. So what you're saying, Sarah, is that so you're saying there's enough of a definition. Excuse me, that sounds confusing. There's enough of a difference between what faith is to you and what religion is to you to make a difference in this question.
Sometimes they're used interchangeably and it doesn't bother me, but like a lot of my atheist friends will talk about, well, religious people, blah, blah, blah. And I'll think, you're exactly right. Religious people do that. But I'm trying, not always successfully, to not be maybe what you're thinking of as religious, which is just, this rule has been set before me and I've never thought about it, and now I'm just going to do it, or rules for the sake of trying to get in, which is what the Pharisees were doing,
Right.
like, so, and that's maybe a rabbit trail, but I agreed with like 90-something% of this article. But that was just a little nuance that I had in that spot. But I will say this, there was another part of that article that I thought was interesting. Another question was asked, and only one of them answered, I think. How is covering religion during the 2020 election different than in 2016?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Diaz answered and said, some things I agree with, some I think are fascinating, and some made me go, I don't know. She said, so much was revealed in 2016. The political influence of prosperity gospel preachers who connect faith with financial wealth, that I find fascinating. And I would love to sometime like think about how that affects politics, because she's probably right that it does. And we would probably all agree that it's maybe not in the best way. But then she goes on to say, the complete marriage of white evangelicals to President Trump, which there was some, I don't know if complete, but that's fine. But then she said the depth of the racial divides within Christianity. And I thought that was interesting given hindsight now, because it seems like now there may not be more divide, but there's definitely more conversation about racial divides. And when I think about racial division within Christianity, I'm wondering if what she means is that there tend to be white churches and black churches, but and maybe that's not what she means. If that's what she means, the difference between a white church and a black church often have to do with style and maybe some kind of minor theological differences, but it's not necessarily like we don't like each other or we think one is less than. So I don't know. Do you think there was more like a height of racial divide in 16?
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest here.
Yeah.
The jump from Barack Obama to Donald Trump was radical, right?
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about a completely opposite human being, and a human in Donald Trump who questioned so much of the validity of Barack Obama throughout his entire campaign. Remember
The birth certificate thing. Yeah.
right? But all I'm saying is, I think in 2016, I think the world began to open up its eyes and say, maybe not. It began then, but like, oh, there is a white church and there is a black church.
Okay.
And I think 2020, in a way, because our eyes have been really opened to that contrast from Obama to Trump, and seeing especially white women evangelicals, like watching that shift take place, and the number of voters that voted against a white woman who is a Sunday school teacher at their church, a professed Christian, to vote for, like that shift and that jump. I think it made it really, I think, drew some 2016 drew some thick lines in the sand that 2020 has spent the past 4 years acknowledging and seeing what to do to either repair or just say they're sort of unrepairable.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
Yeah. Sorry.
I just said I can see that.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts? I'm sorry, taking over.
Oh, no. I mean, I guess on the one hand, I think, I don't know if they're kind of taking a pulse on like where faith and politics these days, because it's always informed, it's not really anything new that religion would inform politics. In many ways, I think it informs politics probably less now than it has in the past. But I think also, there are so many issues that were once in the, this is where I'm the guy who complains that the church doesn't, have enough power or authority in society anymore. But, basically there were things in in the church domain that are now in the political domain. So then people get mad when the church is, like making statements about political matters like abortion or marriage. Yeah, those would be two big issues. Gender now is the big issue of the day. I mean, does the church have anything? Can the church say anything definitive about gender? Can we make those statements? If you look at, I mean, just as an example, when Biden had a town hall and there was a woman and she said she had a transgender child who was 8 or 10 years old or something like
8.
that. And he made the statement, like any kid who wants to be transgender, like should be able to think that way. I don't have the exact quote, but I'm going, what does a 70-something-year-old, presidential candidate know, or what should he be saying about how 10-year-old children should be thinking about their gender? That's none of his business. That's kind of terrifying. And it's kind of terrifying to think that now the government is in a place that will oppose parents, right? So if you have two parents, this happens all the time now, one opposes, one affirms gender transition. The government is now on the side of one of those people, right? I mean, they are. And so that to me is like, well, faith and politics, you're talking about the condition of humanity, the condition of man, and you're taking the side, on an issue like that. And again, the same is true with abortion and marriage and other issues. Gender is just the latest one. So I'm kind of like, well, what do you expect? I mean, what should the church remain silent on these matters? Of course, you could talk about slavery and the way the church failed to speak against slavery, and then it did not fail. But it was an uphill battle, and you could, so it's kind of like if it's a cause people agree with, then they want religion involved. If it's a cause they don't agree with, they want us to shut up. So,
well, okay. So 2 things came to mind when you were talking. One was, I thought you were trying to segue into our next article, which would have been a good segue, except here I am getting in the way. One is, I'm curious to hear from both of you about what people that are in positions of spiritual leadership, pastors, spiritual influence. So even though I'm not a pastor, I think I would count because I teach at a church and that kind of thing, right? So where is it okay for us to, on social media platforms, talk about our politics and where we stand? I think we would probably all agree we don't want our head pastor to get up from the pulpit and tell us who to vote for. That crosses some kind of weird line, right?
But it happens all the time.
Well, of course it does. Yeah. And I think it happens both ways, which kind of gets to so I want to hear your answer to that question. But I think the secondary issue that, like, when you were talking, made me think is the Christian church now, especially in America, isn't nearly as monolithic around the issues you were talking about that they used to be. So now, like, even within the three of us, we differ about things like gender binary, maybe abortion, and various other issues. And so then you're like, well, you can no longer say, well, Christians believe blah, blah, blah is wrong. Christians are anti-LGBTQ. You can't say that because it's just not a true statement. And so that shift has also been an interesting one to watch. But I'm curious, do you think that you can talk about that kind of thing? And like, where's the line? You have spiritual influence. I mean, especially Michael Jarboe. Like when people used to come to Theology on Tap, there'd be a little sign in and it would say like, what church do you go to? People would be like, oh, you know, this, that, Grace Fellowship. Michael Jarboe's people would just write Jarboe. Like, he's not a church, you guys.
No.
He has a fan club. Paul Sloan has one too. It's fine.
Oh, Paul, yeah, right. And mine's slightly, my fan club's slightly larger than Paul Sloan's.
Hey.
Leah Remini is going to be doing a show about Jarboe soon.
Oh my gosh. She's the Scientology lady.
Yeah. No. Look, I think we have an incredible responsibility to do so. I mean, you look at like when you see polling, you know, when you see like political candidates going to try to get reelected, they land in churches. Like I remember John Culberson going up against Lizzie Fletcher here recently. We have this men's group at our church called Men of Action. Great group of guys, about 25 of them or so. And they send out their calendar every year. I'm over men's ministry for our church. And it was like middle of October. This was like for 16 or 18 when the Senate, when the Congress was up for election. And I'm looking at the calendar and it's like Lizzie Fletcher, John Culberson right after that. I'm like, wait, guys, you got John Culberson is a member of MDUMC, right? I mean, a Republican who was in Congress for a very long time. And then Lizzie Fletcher came, a Methodist at St. Luke's, UMC, which is just down the street, both Methodist, right? And they came to the church to speak and share. And that's because like the church is a meeting place. Like, I mean, I know like when I was living in Chicago in seminary, the south side of Chicago would have all the candidates come through their churches, right? And they'd be on the front row at worship. You know, you'd see these goofy white guys in black congregations with gospel, like, you know, even like I saw like Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. I mean, both of those when they were
clapping on the 1-3, probably. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I think, so I think the church does sometimes act as a place of political grassrootedness in so many places, and a place of like information. Like it's a community center along with a church, right? That's why so many churches are like Grace Presbyterian is where I voted for president, right? I'm weaving through the halls, passing the sanctuary, and going to vote for the president. And it's like, this is inside a church fellowship hall, and yet I'm doing this, right? So there's some
interesting.
Where'd you go to seminary?
I went to Garrett Theological Seminary at Northwestern.
Oh, okay. Because I went to LSTC in Chicago on the south side. So
awesome.
I went to seminary in Chicago too.
Okay, sorry. I interrupted you. You're gonna make your
Here's what, and I'll be brief on this answer. There are times, guys, and I, will preach, and I'll see what people write on Facebook, or I'll see animosity, or hear comments, and I'm just like, am I making a difference? My clergy colleagues here at the church talk about that sometimes. Like, we're like, are we really making an impact in people's lives by what we're saying? Because no, we are not saying vote for this person. But our hope is, when we talk about the ethics of Jesus, it may point you in a direction to say, hey, if I'm going to strive to be ethical, maybe I want an ethical leader to lead me. Or I'm just saying, like, or I want someone who values what I think Jesus valued in the world.
Yeah.
And again, that is a way of speaking about it without saying it, right? And again, I'm not trying to put little what are they, like Easter eggs or whatever, like plant, but I am trying to say it without. I mean, isn't that what Jesus did best? Like Jesus was great at sharing stories with the story, but what's the story under the story? And I think that's what we're called to as clergy, and I think that's fair game to do.
No, I agree with you 100%. We might be hoping they choose differently after they hear the sermons or teachings, but I agree that we should be in that market. Did you have anything else to add to that?
Well, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but like if the issue was slavery, right. And it's a convenient issue because it's way far in our past and everyone agrees on it now, but they didn't at the time. So we have the perspective of hindsight on that. And so so let's say slavery were legal today and we're on Facebook and we were saying, slavery is wrong. It should really be abolished. And someone said to us, gosh, you really need to keep your politics off Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we would say, what do you mean politics? Like, yes, it will take political action to undo the laws that have erected this institution. But it's a moral issue. It's a gospel issue because it speaks to the image bearers of God, being treated so horribly and being treated as less than human. It's a statement about what we think about humanity. And I would say that is equally true on the other issues I've already mentioned. Now, whether the property tax should go from 3.5% to 3.75%, I guess some libertarians would say taxation is theft. So, well, that becomes a moral issue. So everyone has to draw a line somewhere.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that generally, or something like, but you have to debate these sorts of things. But I also think that this is again one of my kind of meta worldview kind of things. Like everyone is religious. Everyone is religious. Atheists are religious. Everyone has a point of view. Everyone has a worldview. Everyone has a set of core beliefs that animate their everything, their politics for sure. And so the idea that only people who go to church on Sunday have a kind of religious point of view, I think, is something that we should challenge a little bit. I'll just say one quick thing about this article. One of the authors said it's hard to get more conservatives to talk to us. And I was like, yeah, I wouldn't talk to you. I mean, I wouldn't talk to someone from the New York Times. I think that the media is so obviously biased that until they have internal reform, and they are not quite so condescending to people who, disagree with them, we shouldn't trust. I'll tell you a very quick story. Very quick. I had a reporter from the Chronicle call me when open carry became a law in Texas, like January 1st, 2018. I think it was. Anyway, and like I want to know what I thought about it. I went on and on. I was just talking, and this guy did his job so well.
Just talking and talking, you say?
I was just talking about like what I thought about gun control and stuff like that. I know, hard to believe. And anyway, the next thing I know, our church is on the bottom cover of the front page of the Chronicle, and I'm quoted extensively. And I'm going, I said all that? I don't remember that. I was just talking. They even sent photographers to take pictures of people leaving our church building. They were on the sidewalk, so it's public domain. They didn't talk to anybody. But our church became like the face of like open carry, even though I wasn't saying that per se at all. I was just kind of giving my own thoughts about, why I don't know how much wisdom there is in putting up signs saying don't bring a gun into this space. Because like they have that at schools and they still have school shootings. But anyway, so you have to be careful talking to the media. And I learned I won't be answering that phone call next time. So be careful, Michael. Be careful in the Chronicle.
Oh my gosh.
But you have to be careful if your conviction is what it is. Like, do we have to be so, or have we really become that afraid of the media? I mean, I don't know where the Houston Chronicle stands. I think you'd hope they're fair game, but like if you, right. And you weren't, and that's a difficult thing and we were sat down at our onboarding when we became clergy here at MDUMC and said like, what you say on Facebook represents MDUMC. So don't say anything that's going to put us in a bad light in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And so,
well, see, but that comes back to the original question, what you just said, because I've come under some fire for this recently, just because, I post things on Facebook and some people like it, some people don't like it. And they probably feel the same about all of us, but don't say anything that puts us in a bad light. But you just said you have a Republican congressman that goes to your church. So let's say he worked at the church and you work at the church. I'm guessing you guys vote differently, but you both posted kindly and graciously, but very different thoughts about maybe, what Biden is going to do or what Trump is going to do or whatever, does that put the church in a quote bad light? So is it about the way you say it or is it about what you're saying?
Ooh, I think the way does a lot of work for you.
Yeah.
The way you say it does a lot of the work for you. I mean, and if you can help present both sides and then say, here's where I land, that often helps, you know, and I don't know.
It's a timeless question. We're not going to solve it today,
Yeah.
but that when you said that about Facebook, I thought, but see, therein is the problem, because I think we all agree we have a responsibility to shine the light of faith on what's happening in the political sphere. And yet it can also get us in trouble both ways. So anyway, shall we
go back to that segue?
So speaking of churches.
Okay. Okay. So I had an article I thought was interesting. This is something back when I did the radio show for many, many years. It was a topic that came up over and over again. And it's interesting because this is the first article I've seen where the law kind of went the other way. And it's about conversion therapy. All right. So
here we go. Buckle up.
Conversion therapy is basically therapy to help people who are same-sex attracted not be same-sex attracted, I guess. Or
trans.
Okay.
I think it can.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there are all kinds of conversion therapies. Some are like talk therapies to help people maybe understand why they are same-sex attracted, but some might be full scale. We got to get the devil out of you, right? I mean, it might
pray the gay away.
It might be we're going to wrap you in blankets and we're going to have another birth. You know, we're going to re-womb you, and you know, so you'll come out right this time, or so. You know, there are all kinds of crazy
horrible.
stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
And we probably know some of the history of like the American Psychological Association. You know,
right?
1977, like changed its teaching that or
it's teaching
it's doctrine or belief or I don't know, whatever, that homosexuality was like a disorder, right? So I think that was in 77. There's a whole story behind that. But so this is probably more among all this says is therapists in this article. I don't know what their like qualifications are, but let me read a couple of headlines. This is an article by Jonathan Stemple from Reuters. A divided federal appeals court on Friday declared unconstitutional 2 South Florida laws that banned therapists from offering conversion therapy to children struggling with their sexual orientation or gender identity. Thank you. In a 2-1 decision, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals sided with 2 therapists who said the laws in the city of Boca Raton and Palm Beach County violated their free speech rights. Circuit Judge Britt Grant said that while enjoining the laws allows speech that many find concerning, even dangerous, end quote, the First Amendment, quote, does not allow communities to determine how their neighbors may be counseled about matters of sexual orientation or gender, end quote. Conversion therapy aims to change people's orientations or gender identities. And so basically here, this is like right at the knife's edge, I think, of where this question is going to end up in America. I think that in many respects, Obergefell has kind of answered this question, unless Obergefell is overturned. That's the decision on to allow, sort of gay marriage. But where this is in, I think, conflict with Christianity is the scriptural passages that speak about people who did practice homosexual acts. I think 1 Corinthians 6. And then it says, but such were some of you. So we could maybe do an exegetical debate on 1 Corinthians 6. But I think the question is, does 1 Corinthians 6 or other passages speak of people who are Christian, who once performed those acts, but then did not? Is that
interesting.
Conversion? Did they change? Did they repent? Were they attracted? Or were they just involved with temple prostitutes as a pro forma act? I mean, we don't know all the answers to those questions.
Sure.
But I think that if a Christian therapist believes that a person who is a follower of Christ, and I guess anyone for that matter, but we'll just stay within the church, should not practice homosexual acts or even give in to same-sex attraction in their own mind, do they have the right to say that or not? And I think that if this ruling is upheld, it will be, let's say it's not upheld. Let's say this ends up all the way at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, no, conversion therapy is wrong. I think that would have an incredible chilling effect, as they say, on the liberty to which Christians can proclaim something like homosexuality be a sin. I think it would be virtually impossible. If you don't protect the right to help a person not be a homosexual, then I don't know how you would maintain the right to say, call it a sin anymore. I don't know. I don't know. That's just my own view.
The thing is, yeah, go ahead, Michael.
No, yeah, I just, I think you gave two examples of conversion therapy there, but I mean, like, I don't think we've whittled down even to the root of, I mean, conversion is, I mean, it's not the same as giving my heart over to Jesus and saying I'm no longer I mean, like, the kind of therapy, and who knows, I mean, I'm sure Boca Raton's a beautiful place in Florida.
It is.
Like the kind of what that opens up the kind of therapy to do is incredibly harmful, not only to just a person who is gay, but to just a person's sanity and value of themselves. So it goes beyond just like changing the gay away. I mean, some of this conversion, all this conversion therapy is intense stuff. I mean, some of that blanket stuff is light work compared to, some of the intense psychological
Abuse.
Yeah, that can happen and occur in the midst of that sort of attempt to change a person. Like, I understand if you read scripture one way and understand that being gay is a sin, have that view. But to go and put the matter in your own hands is, for me, in a way, like doing God's work for God.
But
are we becoming God in that conversion therapy space?
I think we probably all agree that a fair amount of what's called conversion therapy is abuse and shouldn't be done. And I do think the government has the right to step in when they see abuses happen, any kind of psychological abuse, even if it's not around homosexuality or transgender identity kind of stuff. But God does ask us to do some of God's work for God, like to partner with him. I think probably the most important distinction to make here before we continue talking is there are different kinds of, quote, conversion therapy. For instance, when we did the podcast that, like, crashed the internet about gender binary, regardless of what you think about that, one of the people that was listening that I got into a conversation with later, who may come on our podcast this year, when she was a little girl, I thought she was a guy, wanted to be a boy. And, but there was some kind of other issues that her teacher noticed with her, with discipline stuff, whatever, got her talking to the counselor at school. By the way, she's very vocal about this, so I'm not outing anything. She goes and tells lots of people this story. And through just the kindness of this therapist, just asking questions like, how did you come to this decision? What makes you think this? That kind of thing. She realized that she had repressed this sexual abuse, and that she had sort of made this vow in her mind that if I'm a boy, I can't be hurt like this. So I'll be a boy to protect myself. And of course, came to the realization, okay, I'm not a boy, but I do have to work through what happened to me, right? And so in that case, and that's considered, quote, conversion therapy. But really it was and we all, regardless of where you stand on trans issues, we want people to find the truth behind what they believe, right? So if that's conversion therapy, just talking to someone about, like, how did you come to this conclusion? How does this bring you happiness? Where doesn't it? That kind of thing. I don't think any of us would maybe have a problem with. I don't know, Michael, I don't want to speak for you. But when we talk about camps where people are spoken to, like boot camp, and like, you're a sniveling worm because you, like, none of us want that. And I realize that the whole issue is about free speech.
Sniveling worm is abuse, period.
I realize the sniveling worm thing is usually like a dominatrix.
In Luther, we call people piles of dung.
There we go.
Oh, okay, good.
We're not, us Presbyterians and Methodists
that's not actually true. No. Luther said that about himself.
I think here's the thing. It's just, and that story by that individual is her story to tell, and I don't want to say anything against that. But what I do want to say is, it's like when you open the door to conversion therapy, the door is open, and once the door is open, it can go as wide as it needs to be. Unfortunately, I think with those kind of once the the knob has moved and the door has opened, that's where it can spread. And so I'm just like, Yes, I think we're all in agreement in this conversation about like the boot camp and the pain and the mental suffering people put others through to change them is wrong. But if you open the door on conversion therapy, you can get there.
What if we were to think about this like medicine? Like we would never say, well, we don't want to open the door to a certain medical therapy that could really help some people because others might abuse it. We would want to regulate. Like we would want to say, I mean, doctors have to take a Hippocratic oath. They have to do no harm. They have to, sort of have sunshine and transparency, as they say, to what they do. I guess to me, that would be the next step is don't not open the door at all, especially if we think of it as something that could provide healing, but to be compassionate and wise and have some agreement about what's a bridge too far.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to compare medicine with faith in regard to saying like, if I, for me, like if people can abuse medicine, they can abuse faith.
Yep.
I agree on both, but like, the psychotics of what medicine can do to a brain have measured results. And it's like the three of us all grieved. If we all three, if something tragic, the same thing tragic happened to all three of us, we'd all grieve in different ways. And the human mind works. Maybe if we had the same medicine, we'd all respond closer to the same way. But medicine seems a little bit more calculated than manipulating someone through what they believe themselves to be.
So maybe that word you just used is maybe the linchpin of this is manipulating. So not everybody knows I have my background. I was a counselor therapist for a while. So that's what I have my background in. And there are all kinds of ethical classes and rules that you have to learn because you do have you're in the same room talking about very intimate things with somebody. And you're right. It's harder to quantify than like 2 aspirin is a good amount, 20 aspirin is a bad amount, right?
Right.
But if you think that something is harmful, and again, that's where I think our differences lie is what do we think about, homosexuality and what the Bible has to say about it. But if you think it's something that the Bible says is sin, I wonder if we took another sin and we put it in that place, how we might think of therapy differently. Mm-hmm. Like if someone had a pornography addiction and they go to a therapist, like, I know that I don't want to keep doing this. Can you help me? And the therapist is like, yeah, let's come up with some plans to do that. I don't think we would have a problem with that.
And these are the therapists who are the plaintiffs, I guess, in this. They, I don't know if plaintiff is the right word. Anyway, they won. Their clients were people who were Christians who were same-sex attracted. So they sought the help, right? So
that's a good distinction
it's
too.
It's not like you took in your 8-year-old kid.
Right. Sure.
But again, I'm sure that happens. I'm sure that there are people out there who's like, kid says, I want to be a boy and they're a girl. And so the parents take him into Christian therapists down the street.
I think that's the story you hear the most, Evan.
Yeah. But my concern is, here's really the question. So like, is it better to have the door open, but have to find those ways in which it needs to be restricted, or to have it shut altogether? Because I think that if this is appealed, and this is a case, for example, that goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says all conversion therapy is banned, I think it becomes virtually impossible for the Christian church to ever say anything against homosexuality, because essentially the message that Christianity offers is conversion from homosexuality. If you're on the conservative side of things. Now, of course, not all Christians are. We know that. I was, in the ELCA, and I'm not anymore, and that's the main reason for it. But so that's a debate the church can have within itself. Like if someone wants an affirming Christian church, like they're not hard to find. But let the churches sort of support or not that. But if the Supreme Court sort of, that's the concern, is that like, now, do we want the courts to get involved in figuring out which therapies are harmful or not? I mean, that's really hard, because then it's like, well, the birthing thing with the blankets, that's wrong. But the one step below that is okay. I don't know how you determine that. Now, the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, opposes conversion therapy. So, and the argument against it, by the way, in the dissent was that it stigmatizes people and it will cause harm. I mean, those are usually the arguments against something like conversion therapy.
Exactly. Right.
So But my concern is, again, if conversion isn't on the table legally, I just don't know how the church can. I don't know how that isn't a repression of the free speech that the church would have on a doctrinal issue. So it's really interesting. And again, I mean, there's no conclusion to it. It's like I said, I just think this issue is on the knife's edge. It's let's say all of us disagreed with conversion therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still arguing that there should be the right for some therapist to speak to people who don't want to have same-sex attraction, to help them maybe figure out why they have it, et cetera, et cetera.
It's like flag burning. Like, I don't want people burning flags, but I think they should have the right to burn them. That's anyway.
Yeah.
Michael, I know you want to say something.
Yeah.
No, I'm just.
He's like, which thing to pick?
No, yeah, Evan, when you say it that way, it is sort of convicting there. And just another conversation is about, whether homosexuality is a sin or not. I don't think I land there. And so for that to be innately a part of who you are, and to have that shifted and changed, for me is like and to allow the space for someone to attempt their best at doing something God has already done for us. That's a struggle for me. But then I hear your argument, Evan, in saying, like, but I still don't, putting restrictions around someone having the opportunity to do that. That's where some lines get a little handy in that regard.
Here's where I think this whole thing is just so interesting too, because say if you look at the Equality Act, or even Obergefell to a degree, they have placed the Equality Act, if passed, it says in the law that essentially all the LGBT issues are going to be lumped in. They're going to be brought into the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, so it's an equation, because what you said was who people inherently are. That's the debate.
That's the debate.
Okay. A person is inherently Black. The laws were written against people of color, Black people. I mean, really, to be Black and to be a slave were virtually synonymous at a certain point in our nation's history. The laws were at first against slaves. And I talked to Joel McDermott about this one. It's on YouTube if you want to listen to that. But the laws were against slaves. And then, like, over the course of time, they just became against Black people, because it was just assumed that if you were a slave, you were Black. So I understand the intrinsic nature that a person is Black. They are Black. Like, that is not going to change. I don't think the Bible speaks about that when it talks about sex acts. I don't, and with the exception of the fact, I'm an inherent sinner and things of that nature. So that's the debate. And so the question is, do we want the government involved in the debate? I understand the need for the government to get involved in whether a state has the right to say someone is Black or not, but I don't know if I want the government involved in saying you have the right to affirm or deny that a person's intrinsic sexuality is who they are innately. If you deny the right of someone to do that, it's a fundamental denial of their human rights. I just don't think the Bible, because I don't think the debate in the Bible is about the inherent nature of a person. I think the debate in a Bible is about the profaning of your body.
Oh, okay.
Through certain acts. That's it. Yeah. It's actually a very simple debate in the Bible, I think. It's don't do that with your body,
Michael's like, I don't know about that.
I don't know if it's simple.
I want you to get the last word on this, though. And then
and listen, look, I don't think anything is simple about human sexuality. It's all it's a difficult line, and you're not a denomination you once were because of it. And my denomination is probably in the batter's box whenever this virus wraps up, in whatever capacity that is, to be voting on what to do next and that. And so I think it's like slavery, like women in leadership in churches. I think the church, unfortunately, will split as well around this subject, because it is beyond simple. And I wish it was. I wish not Paul, Jesus would come down and speak to us and give us a little clarity on what we should do fully here. And yet we don't have that. And so for me, it goes back to the Imago Dei. It goes back to the image of God. and that's hard to wrestle with. I talked about my sermon this Sunday about like we have to use, like, when I see a dove, my mind jumps to the Holy Spirit. Like I think about, and that's why we need images like fire and water and wind and the dove, and like, you know, to help express a theological understanding that we can't see like face to face, right? Like gay people, lesbians are both black and brown and white, and so it's hard, and then it's hard to distinguish, like, yes, the slavery moved into just being black people, and the kind of the rules and regulations and the societal thought of the time moved into being discriminatory against those folks. But what's difficult is it's hard to negotiate, and it's hard for me to allow space for someone to value or devalue someone based on who they are, made in the image of God. That's hard. And like, I think gay people are sinners.
Because we all are.
Just not because they're gay.
Sure.
And that's a distinction between, I think, the three of us, is we find what that line looks like, and that is, and I didn't get there with that conclusion. I wasn't born with that conclusion. It's just grown throughout time. And
I was thinking about there seems to be, so I have 2 teenage kids, and they come home from school and tell me that at school it's become cool to be gay or cool to be trans. Like, it's trendy to have something about your sexuality that's different from a traditional sexuality. And I think it's probably obvious that of all of the people at, say, my son's high school that say they're gay, they're not all gay. Some of them are, and some of them are trying it on for size because it gets them like in with some crowd, or it helps them stand out, or it's like, well, I want to, you know what I'm saying? Some of them are saying it when they're not. And in that kind of situation, and there's a book that came out recently about a trend with teenage girls, where one teenage girl in sort of a group of girl friends will come out as being a trans man, and the other girls will follow suit out of this sort of camaraderie. And it's tricky about what to do with that, because certainly not all of those girls just happen to be legitimately trans, like even if one was. So I want, as a mom, for there to be some space, some very compassionate, almost neutral, but loving Christian space where, if my kid were in that camp, could just ask questions. I don't even know if I want the word conversion out there, but just like and as a therapist, this is what we do anyway. If you're a good therapist, you're not telling people what they think. You're helping them come to their own conclusions and discover what they already think is best about a situation, right? So you're asking a ton of questions. How did you come to this conclusion? What experiences led you there? Let's talk about those experiences. How did that make you feel? Tell me about your mother. But seriously, like those kinds of things, I want my kids to have that, because if at the end of the day they're gay, then they're gay. But I want the path there to not be because it was trendy at school. And I am not saying that all gay people, that's the situation, right? But it's out there. And so I want there to be some space where people can explore that. I don't know. Maybe that's a tangent.
How times have changed from us being in high school and middle
right?
school.
When it was like the thing to get you bullied.
The thing to get you bullied. Yeah, right. I mean, the number of people that have come out of the closet since high school, from my high school, and maybe that you all have similar experiences, like, Jerry's getting married to a guy. Okay. Which Jerry beat up the one gay person that was out at my school in the theater department when he was, so like, and now it's just, sorry. I'm going off on my own tangent where I say, Sarah, like, I too wish there was a space healthy enough. Hopefully our education departments are finding spaces, and then this could be a whole nother around
podcast,
the Blackboard, of like, is that the church's role, or is it our school's role? So
Yeah, this is fascinating. We could talk about it the rest of the time.
And I just want to say, I asked a girl out to prom, and she was already going with someone who ended up being gay later. So,
Hey,
you dodged a bullet.
My whole life could have been different, though. I mean, maybe she would have fallen in love with me, like at the Under the Enchantment Sea dance.
Or she could have turned you gay. That's how it works.
No, I don't think she.
Oh my gosh, we lost Michael.
Anyway,
that's not really how it works for our listeners. I do not think that is how it works.
I'm happily married.
But can we just picture Evan gay for a second? Okay, just kidding. Let's not do that.
What?
Oh goodness. Okay, let's move on, shall we?
I'm not gonna do anything. It would just get whatever I did now would get me in trouble.
That's true.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. I rescind that. Jury will disregard. Okay.
We're all friendly here.
So let's move on to one of our other articles. We've got a couple that kind of dovetail with each other around this idea of, because of COVID, because of the pandemic, limitations on groups meeting. And we've seen some of this in our own states, but the article that we have here from The Observer, which is British, I guess, is talking about English churches in England. Oh, I forgot I was supposed to be talking about all of this in a British accent.
Cockney,
yes. Righto. Cheerio and all
East
that.
London.
Okay. No. Oh, like a Cockney.
Oh,
it
Cockney.
sounds like,
Cockney?
no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to insult everyone I already haven't insulted.
Sarah,
But
just stop.
yeah, good call.
I want you to sound like child labor from the early 1900s on the east side of London.
Oliver.
Okay? I want you to be covered with like soot and. Okay, carry on.
Okay. But we'll go watch Oliver later and
Yes.
we'll satisfy that itch. Okay. So it starts by saying, it sounds like the buildup to an illegal rave. Invitations are passed by word of mouth to trusted people. Minimal information, time, directions is quietly given with pleas for discretion. Once everyone is assembled in a barn on a remote farm, quote, away from prying eyes, says the organizer, it begins. This is, of course, no rave, but an English church service under lockdown. It goes on to say that they've been holding these clandestine, this is a quote, we've been holding clandestine services since this lockdown began, the pastor told The Observer, speaking on condition of anonymity. Yikes. It feels weird for us to act this way. People have said it feels more like an underground church in China. Yikes. Evan actually brought this article to the table today, but it's kind of a fascinating thing to think about where the government can and can't tell you to do something like assemble as a church. And I don't think that even in the most restrictive states in America, there haven't been complete lockdowns of churches, but there have been limitations, or at least I guess actually in New York.
In California, I think they were
Is it
as full lockdown as you can get now some are defying, like the John MacArthur's and several others, but
okay.
I mean, that's California, so I don't know, but no,
yeah,
I mean, I don't think they were allowed to have services. I think they said live stream or bust.
Huh. Well, and of course, in New York, that the other article we had that kind of dovetailed with this one is that in New York, I guess it was the governor that said it was going to be limited to 10 people per gathering, and churches rose up and fought against that, and the Supreme Court came down on the side of no, we're not going to put those limitations on them. But I guess I'm getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah. Either way, to be in Britain and to have to worship in secret is, I don't know, it's sort of scary. Like you think about that kind of thing in maybe a communist regime, but not in Great Britain,
But
yeah,
it's like, oh man, it's a little, and listen, I love that opening paragraph. As a journalism major in college, wanting to do sports journalism, and as a preacher today who has so much fluff in his sermons, like that is straight on. But like to compare it to communist China, it's like, give me a break. I mean, in my opinion, I just like, are we worshiping a church or are we worshiping a living God? Like that's the question. Like, and I say that as a pastor whose church has been meeting in 25% capacity right now for the past 6 weeks or so. And but do we still have live stream? Sure. Do we still have opportunities for worship in other ways? Absolutely. I just think and let me tell you, and also I'm giving a lot of caveats here. Like the people who come back into the church at where I'm at MDUMC for the first time in 30 weeks, 35 weeks are visibly emotional, through their masks, tears, goosebumps. I've seen that, just, I can't believe it's been this long. And it's like a beautiful thing. I'm thankful we're offering that space. But like at the same time, this government is not trying to, the government's not trying to kill us. It's trying to keep us safe. And
I guess the question isn't about, it's about what are they supposed to do? What are they allowed to do? Because I love the idea of keeping people safe. I think churches should be doing that and people should be helping each other with that. But does the government get to say you can't meet, or you have 10 people, or you have 15 people? I mean, that's really the question, I think, is where do they get to have their voice?
But they're saying 10 or 15 people for any indoor activity. So you get like a basketball game or a large chess tournament or a Catholic mass. Like, I mean, like 10 is 10 is 10. It's not like if it was like 100 people can meet to watch a cricket match indoors here in Great Britain, but only 10 people can meet at the church, then I would be like, okay, we got a different article here.
That's true. I'll give you that.
If the rule is across the board, then why isn't the church being the ones to lead the charge and to do the ethical thing rather than, I mean, sure. Could we open our doors and have full capacity at NUMC? I bet we could, but like we're trying to do it the safest way possible with the most strategy around cleanliness and distance that we possibly can. And we've done a great job the past few weeks. And so I don't know. I feel like this, and I'm not, John Wesley was from England, so he's my homeboy. So I like him a lot, but I don't know what the church looks like in England for them to have to go to this capacity to do. And is technological advance is not a place where Google or Zoom or Microsoft Teams can't help out this situation.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is like there's a conversation about rights on the one hand, like just like maybe the government should have no right at all to tell us how to worship, or they do have rights to tell us how to worship. Or can we, like, are we even assessing the danger of COVID? That's what I don't understand about this. Is like, okay, if COVID killed half of the people that got it, okay. But I mean, part of John MacArthur's point when they reopened was like, just the data doesn't seem to indicate that it warrants this. I read, for example, I get Imprimis, the Hillsdale College's newsletter, and it was about COVID, and it was a guy in Stanford that did a study that found that given antibodies, that the mortality rate for COVID was 0.2%. And he was laughed off the stage because it was like 5% in New York at the time. This was in like March and April. And well, sure enough, like we've now done studies all over the world, it's 0.2%. It's a bad flu, but I understand that people, it obviously disproportionately affects certain people.
Yeah.
Just like the flu disproportionately affects young people rather than old people, et cetera, et cetera. These things, it disproportionately affects people. I know you're not supposed to say that, and if people want to choose, we have a live stream, like at our church we have a live stream. I botched it yesterday. The sound was terrible. I don't know why, but so it's an option for people. People are choosing to stay home, but some people are not.
That could be because they're afraid of all the guns that are here. Okay, I'm kidding. But there's another element too about keeping people safe from COVID is something that the church should definitely be taking the charge on. I agree with you, Michael. I do think we have to consider other kinds of emotional well-being that the church is responsible for, or maybe not responsible for, but that we should be as compassionate people thinking about. I just heard about an NBC article. I pulled it up. I didn't tell them we were doing this, but it's NBC News, the hidden COVID-19 health crisis. Elderly people are dying from isolation. And of course, it's just talking about the same kind of thing you saw in church where people were like, I haven't seen another human in so long. There is a cost to the kind of isolation that's happening. And that has to play into the equation as well. And I don't know where the government is taking that kind of thing into consideration. And you're right. It's not just targeted at churches. It's indoor activities. And so we shouldn't say it's like, they hate the church. They're causing us to go underground. You're right. That's a little dramatic. But I don't know. I think there's multiple sides to the coin.
And just as an update, I mean, if you will, the Supreme Court did rule November 25th that this was about the New York case.
Yeah.
So it was a 5-4 decision. So that whole, ACB thing matters, I guess, but she matters, not that thing. Anyway, 5-4 decision struck down an order by Andrew Cuomo that restricted the size of religious gatherings. So anyway, so I mean, so there is some pushback on it now, and I don't know if that will have a chilling effect. They always talk about chilling effects when they talk about the Supreme Court. So there was a case that came up from Nevada that allowed casinos to be open, but not churches, and other cases in California that Roberts had ruled against, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it's troubling. All right. Because of course I think that, but it was about not overwhelming the hospital system. And then it was about something else. And I don't know where any of this is going. I don't have clarity from my government about, what is the end goal of isolation? What is the end goal of wearing masks, which are basically not effective? They're not. I mean, we have enough data on that now to say that masks don't prevent this. Most of the people that have COVID, the large majority of which were wearing masks all the time. So, I don't know. But to me, it might be a little bit dramatic on the writing. It's not communist China, because I guess in theory in England, they'll be able to meet again soon, like once COVID has passed, whereas in China, that's never going to be the case.
That's true. That's a good distinction.
But,
right.
But, if we don't make a stink about this now, it's the old slippery slope argument. What's next? That is concerning. And I do think that churches, they can't arrest us all. So I think there needs to come a point where we say, come and get us, come and take it. We have the sign in Texas, come and take it.
That's right. We're already prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. I know, like, here's the thing. And my senior pastor said this today. And I think you and I would agree, Evan, especially as pastors, and Sarah even do working with church folks, is like, we all three went to seminary in the great city of Chicago, but
we got to talk about that at some point.
I love that, but we did not take a course in infectious diseases, and yet we are trying to manage and function. I get emails all the time from folks saying, what about my freedom to get to come to worship and worship as this was months ago when we were saying no to worship reopening, and it's like, yeah, but what about mine? And so, like, who gets to be safe? Who gets to be safe more? Is it me, the pastor, or are you the layperson? And it gets messy. And I think the same goes for, I think our brother Fauci is trying who's the expert on infectious disease, and he just says it's just going to continue to get worse, and it kind of does. Like, if numbers say what they are, and if cases keep rising and surges, unless those graphs are whack. Which I've seen so many graphs, and so they're all starting to kind of blur together. And so for me, it's sort of like the go-to is, for me it's Wesley's 3 simple rules, which is do good, do no harm, and stay in love with the gospel. And I try to hold to those at all time. And when I was the acting senior pastor here at MDMC for 11 weeks in April through June, I had to keep saying that second one over and over again: do no harm, do no harm, do no harm, do no harm. Because if I didn't, I would at times want to fall towards the easy route, which would have been like, flip the switch back on, let's get back to normal, And so I think if our guiding rule or guiding hope is to do no harm, I don't think Brother Cuomo up in New York was just trying to be a dick and say, like, I want to make religious institutions have a difficult time to meet again. I think it was like, what can I do to keep the state as safe as I possibly can? And I think that goes for any Republican or Democratic governor or judge or leader, is they're not trying to screw some sort of institution that's trying to live their best life in 2020. They're trying to keep people as safe as possible, and it's a pain.
I think you're right. that they're trying to keep people safe, that they're not trying to just like stick it to the Christians or something. I agree with you there.
Or the Jews, right? The cover article had all these
Oh yeah,
Jews outside of their synagogues in New York, right? Like, so yeah. I mean, sorry, I'm not coming for you, Sarah, about just Christians. I'm just saying, like, I think safety of people is our lawmakers and law enforcers' greatest hopes. If I can't believe that there's goodness coming from them, then there's goodness coming from them, then oh man, it goes back to my original.
I don't believe there's goodness coming from them.
I'm somewhere in between y'all.
Yeah.
He's the cranky get off my lawn guy. You're like eternal optimist, and I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see.
Again, the thing is for me that if I really, this is probably the real difference. Like, if I really believed that this disease was if I was as afraid of it as everyone tells me to be, I think I'd agree with all points that yes, there comes a point where the government has a role in keeping us safe, maybe even against our own will at times or something like that. I just don't. I'm just not looking at this and going, I mean, it used to be we talk about death, and we don't even talk about it anymore. It's just number of cases, which to me is a meaningless stat. The stat is how many, we don't even know. Again, that's why the Stanford case looked at antibodies, because that's how you try to find out how many people had it. You're not going to know how many people had it because by testing, because so many people have it and are asymptomatic, which says something about it in and of itself. So the question is, but now that they've done these antibody tests to find out how many people have it, it's pretty well universal that we know that if you look at the number of people that died, the number of people that had it, we seem to know a lot more now than we did in March. So it's just my own opinion that it doesn't seem to be that dangerous, except for a certain number of people, a certain demographic of people.
Sure.
And I think that those people should make choices.
And we should be protecting them with extra precaution.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, we're never going to agree on that. But I do think that my concern is, everything the government does is going to be in the name of safety. They're never going to come to us and be like, here, we want to harm you greatly. We want to take everything that is yours. It's always going to be in the name of safety. So
communists. All right.
We have to be super duper like discerning about like, wait a minute, like everything, that you're always going to be an angel of light. When do you fight? Like, when do you say, wait a minute, you just crossed a line and I'm not going to let you go any further.
Well, and there's also, you've crossed a line. I agree with the sentiment. I just don't want you to be enforcing it legally. Like talking about the masks, before we really knew much about them, but we were starting to wear them and it was being enforced. My whole thing was, I don't want the government to make me wear this. I'm going to wear it because I love Jesus, and Jesus tells me to love my neighbor. And the idea at the time, at least up until pretty recently, was you wearing the masks doesn't protect you. It protects the other people from you, right? Should you sneeze or whatever, like I wear the mask for everyone else at HEB or wherever I am. And so to that end, it's like your 3 Wesleyan mantras. What are they called again?
The 3 simple rules.
3 simple rules. I think that would dictate that I wear a mask. There's a difference between that and the government saying you must wear a mask. And again, that one is small. Like if the government says I have to wear a mask, no big deal. But again, I don't know where the time is to rise up and fight. Evan thinks it's a little probably closer than I do. And maybe you're further back, and we'll just hope that we're not welded into our homes like Korea. And
we're out of time, but I have one question for Michael.
Oh,
will you visit me in prison, Michael?
Oh my gosh.
As long as you're wearing a mask, bro.
Hey!
Okay. Oh, I don't think I'll have a choice there. They don't want it spreading in the prison. It's
that's
a petri dish. It's a petri dish there.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, Huntsville.
Maybe they'll just release me. That would be ironic. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I'm just saying, prisons were where a lot of the hot spots were, and they reduced sentences to some prisoners early on. Yeah, and I agree with you there, Evan, that like what we know about it from March to today is significantly different. Like, right? I mean, it's like we had what I really believed at one time, what you touched, and they're saying today, like, it's not what you touched. That's not the biggest. It's really through spit and through conversation And so, we don't have to go into the logistics of that, but we've come a long way, and yet we've also become comfortable that we've stepped back, I think, in a way. And I don't know, like, do we need a shot in the arm that just like hurts right in the moment, but feels really good after time? And we know we have that like safety, or do we need to just like fight the, So.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we've gone for over an hour. So,
okay.
We have taxed our audience. So,
but Michael, you have to come back and talk to us again about some more stuff.
For sure. And Michael, how do people find you? In case they didn't hear, you're at Memorial Drive United Methodist
Memorial
Church.
Drive United Methodist Church, one of the many memorial drives. So mdumc.org. I am also the lead pastor at The Journey, which is our contemporary service here at MDUMC. So if you go to mdumc.org/worship, you can find it out, or look on the App Store and download, listen to us. We're on podcast, and we have an app as well. And then Instagram at Michael Jarbo, Twitter at Michael Jarbo.
Or just say his name 3 times, like Bloody Mary into a mirror.
Yeah, that's right.
Beetlejuice.
As a 7 on the Enneagram, which a friend of mine talked about it being
of the devil,
connected to some devil worshiping, which we won't go into Enneagram stuff today. But as a 7, I really have no strangers. So please be my friend.
Oh,
there you go.
I'm a 7 too, Michael. We have some kindred spirit there.
Good.
Although Marcia Montenegro would say I'm not a 7, but that's a conversation for another day.
And you're at Memorial Drive Presbyterian Church.
Yep. MDPC.org. But of course, you can find all of us at the Theology on Tap Facebook page, and you can, and HoustonTOT.com. We each have a little bio up there, and it has how you can email us and can learn a little bit more about our faith backgrounds. That's kind of cool.
Yep.
Yeah. It's great.
And if you want to see a real 1920s slate Blackboard, you can come to First Lutheran. So there you go. All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back next time. Let me see if I can remember our tagline. Yeah. Question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.
You got it.
Okay. Everyone, y'all have a great day. Michael, see you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.